My name is Deborah Corey. I was born in 1965 on a U.S. military base in Germany. Well, both my father and my grandfather were stationed there at one time, but I lived with my grandfather because I never knew my dad. When I was 2, my mother got remarried. And all of a sudden, I had to compete for any attention at all. And most times, the attention I received was a combination of mental and physical abuse that lasted well into my teen years. In hindsight, that is what planted the seeds for the mental issues I suffered with in the future. When I started school, I had no model of appropriate social interactions with others. I couldn't stay focused, and I wasn't motivated to try. As the oldest child in the household, I was just trying to take care of myself and my step-siblings because I was the closest thing they had to a stable parental figure. When I tried to talk to my parents about this, they didn't understand or didn't care. And I got labeled as the black sheep of the family. So trying to take care of myself in this environment wasn't going to help. So I had no other options. I started drinking when I was 17.
My mother gave birth to me when she was 21. At that age and with that background, she was unprepared for the responsibilities of raising a child. My step-grandfather tried over and over again to get me removed from the only parent I knew. I lived in this chaotic and unstable environment for 5 years until
I tried to kill myself. Instead, all that happened was that I ended up on disability. The years of abuse had taken their toll over the past 21 years, and the suicide attempt, combined with the mental illness, made me unable to work. I spent 7 years like this. Toxic social circles, family members who kept trying to take my daughter. The alcohol didn't even work anymore. So I started using street drugs.
I was born in 1999. My mother was 33 and had just had a tubal ligation just a month before I was conceived. Let's just say the pregnancy came as quite a shock to her.
My daughter deserved better than to grow up in that environment we were living in. I'd already tried to kill myself, and I figured I would be doing her a favor by killing her at the same time. But once again, it didn't work. Now I didn't know what to do. So I took comfort in the one coping mechanism I had.
my mother's drug and alcohol addiction became all day, every day. It was her way of dealing with the stresses of parenting us and the trauma of her childhood abuse. In the same way that her younger siblings looked to her as the adult figure, Desiree sought stability from me. I was 12 years old.
My sister left home and got married when she was 17. She was the only person who provided stability in the house, so I felt deeply abandoned. With my mother's multiple hospitalizations and suicide attempts, my step-grandfather finally succeeded in getting a judge to remove me from my mother. So I was placed with him, the same man that had abused my mother for over a decade. As you would imagine, the cycle of abuse continued with me. I spent my 5th birthday being physically and emotionally abused.
My older daughter left, and my younger one was taken away. Well, I had nothing to live for anymore. I was hospitalized yet again for another suicide attempt. But I was able to get Desiree back once I was released. Still, I knew I couldn't stay in Texas. There were no good mental health resources available that I knew about. And if we stayed, we were just going to continue in this cycle. Luckily, a friend suggested a move to Kansas.
We arrived in Wichita in 2004 when I was 5 years old. We lived with a friend that had suggested coming to Kansas, but that environment only enabled my mother's drug abuse.
I couldn't get past my addictions. Even though I saw what it did to Desiree, I kept thinking about how to kill myself. My psychosis was fueled by what I now know was major depressive disorder, borderline personality disorder, and PTSD. We survived on disability payments and child support from Desiree's biological father, and I was able to find us a more safe and stable housing situation.
I was 6 years old when I started attending school in Wichita, but I struggled with the transition because of my attachment disorder and abandonment issues. I didn't know what safe and healthy relationships with adults looked like. The anxiety and anger made interactions with other children unsafe, and that transferred over at home with my mother too. I just assumed that every new person I met was going to abuse me the way that my grandfather had. I was bullied at school, I was scared of meeting new people in public, and I lived at home with a mother who was an alcoholic and a drug addict. When I was 14, I created my own plan to escape in case the situation at home became too bad. And I had my own hospitalization for suicidal ideation. Living life the way that I was every day just didn't seem fair.
As a mother, I couldn't give what I hadn't been taught. And what I had been taught was abuse, not hugs, not kisses, not love or encouragement.
My mother and I lived together in this unstable holding pattern where we were each just trying to live one day more with our mental illnesses.
I hated seeing my daughter like this. I knew she deserved more. One day, I heard about the Mental Health Association.
I first met Desiree in 2006 during an initial evaluation. She was 7 years old and she was angry. We got her a case manager from our children's division right away. Over the next 8 years, she went through attendant care, therapy, psychosocial groups, the CompPeer program, and medication management. She also participated in support groups to treat reactive attachment disorder, ADHD, and oppositional defiant disorder. Deborah didn't have financial resources, but we made sure that Desiree got the help she needed without Deborah needing to worry about the cost.
The staff members that I worked with at MHA from 2006 to 2014 gave me coping mechanisms to deal with what was going on in my brain. They described these coping skills as a toolbox to keep in the forefront of my mind to help me with those situations that I might face in the world that might trigger those illnesses.
I watched as Desiree slowly began to heal. For the first time in my life, it gave me genuine hope that maybe I could get better too and be the person and the mother that my daughter deserved. Seeing her progress, I also reached out to MHA and got case management. I later also received attendant care, employment services, and outpatient counseling for my mental health and substance abuse issues.
As Deborah's caseworker, I've been able to see both Deborah and Desiree grow individually and as a mother-daughter pair. Instead of simply trying to survive, they're now recovery buddies. Instead of just existing as one person who needs help, living with another who needs help, they have a team of case managers, therapists, peer specialists, and each other.
In 2016, I took a leap of faith and applied to be a certified peer support specialist at MHA. Oh, I was thrilled when I was hired, and I now work in one of MHA's group homes where I'm able to speak with the residents from firsthand experience about their own recovery journey. And I also use what I learn in my continuing recovery efforts. Maybe best of all, the job at MHA has allowed me to move into my own home for the first time in 13 years.
After finishing high school in 2017, my friends that I had made through my years of treatment at MHA inspired me to attend Wichita State University and become a licensed social worker. And just last May, I followed in my mother's footsteps and joined MHA as a children's attendant care worker. It's surreal to think that I now get to help children in the same program that helped me so much when I first started getting services. I also recently moved into my own place.
Desiree taking this step of initiating a major transition despite her past struggles with change
And Deborah's ability to cope with this change
is proof of their growing strength as people. Deb and Desiree speak openly about their past challenges and current situations with the consumers that they serve.
Deborah has been clean and sober for 5 years now.
And Desiree has dealt with her anger and abandonment issues to the point where she no longer requires regular services.
My mother and I are now on a positive path. There's no question that our past trauma has shaped who we are today, but
We're both gainfully employed, and we both want to serve others through our positions at MHA. And we are staying connected to one another at our own pace while we heal. Most importantly, we are so thankful to the organization that provided the treatment we needed at the lowest point in our lives. The programs that helped us will continue to be resources to this community for as long as people like you will support them.
Without that support, Deborah and Desiree wouldn't be here today. But because of MHA, they are.